Hey, it's Chuck. We are not bemoaning the noon kickoff. We are now owning it. It's a badge of honor. We're the lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth. We're Ohioans. He's got it all, man. He's even got the jaw. You know the jaw. You see that jaw, and you're just like, yeah, man, that's a dude. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. Yeah, welcome into Buckeye Huddle Prime Time. Appreciate you so much for joining me on a Monday evening, as we are here every Monday and Wednesday evening. A lot going on in the world of Buckeye, guys. A lot going on in college football. I was just talking to my brother before I hopped on here. And you may know this. I live in the online world now, right? I live in the online world, and I'm consistently interacting with fans of other programs. You have got to be just imagine yourself. Do you remember when Bama was on top of the world, right? If you ever crap talking to a Bama fan, there's nothing really you can say about the Bama program during that period. You couldn't really say anything to Georgia in 2022. It's just yeah, you got it, man. I gotta come at you some other way. I certainly can't talk about your program. The amount of people that don't feel ridiculous talking crap about the Ohio State football program just bothers me. How stupid do you got to be to honestly think there's anything you could possibly say to the Ohio State football fan right now that would make them feel any sort of way? There's nothing you can say to me. We're living on top of the world right now, man. Living on top of the world, 8-0, number one team in the country. We're about to talk about a bunch of awards that some Buckeyes are going to be up for. Obviously, the defending national champion, the odds-on favorite to win it this year, and those odds don't mean anything. They got to go get it done. It just feels great, man. It feels great to be alive. Better to be a Buckeye. Now, over the weekend, Ohio State beats Penn State, and I think that this game was very, very important for Julian Sayin, because I think we're starting to see the talking heads around the country realize for the first time is I don't think they'd really watched Julian Sayin. I think they thought or were under the impression that he was kind of a point guard distributing the ball to some incredible wide receivers. I think that's what they thought about him. And if we're looking at the schedule, they haven't had a ton of reasons to watch Julian Sayin. There hasn't been a lot of big games, and the games that, the big blowouts for the most part. So Penn State, there wasn't anything else on. There was not another premier game on during that time period. So they all tuned in. No doubt hoping that Penn State could keep it close, as I would be if it was somebody else's team. And Penn State kept it close, not really any of their doing, more Ohio State's. The Buckeyes come out, really hot on offense. They scored 2 touchdowns and a field goal in their first 3 possessions. 3 possessions, 3 scores. Get the ball for their 4th possession with just 2 minutes left in the first half. And in a 2-minute drill, they hand it off to their explosive back, C.J. Donaldson, to see if he can pop off a quick 50-yard run and surprise him, catch the defense slipping, and that doesn't happen. He fumbles. So Penn State scores, and it's just a 3-point lead at the half, and that was perfect because it kept everybody hooked and watching in the third quarter when Julian Sayin came out and then just started dropping bombs on everybody. And the timing for this could not have been better. This is right about the time, and Julian had a flawless game. It was his best game yet, but it wasn't his best by a ton. And the fact that a flawless game was just a little bit better than a couple of other games he's had kind of says it all, man. The dude is a football throwing savant. And this is the time of year where oftentimes we see the winner of the Heisman Trophy start to get the momentum. You've cycled through guys over and over and over throughout the season and kind of whittled them off the list, or they've fallen off the list themselves. And we've seen an abnormal amount of dudes fall off the list this year, particularly with all the programs that, at the beginning of the season, we thought were going to be good. Penn State and Clemson and Texas. Of course, all of their quarterbacks were up way higher on this, on the odds board than Julian Sayin was. And now here we sit with just a couple left that are kind of in the running here. Julian's numbers are insane. Not only is he the most accurate quarterback in the country, but the difference between him, and this is courtesy of Tony, this stat here, I love this one. The difference between Julian Sayin, as far as his completion percentage and second place is about 7 percentage points. And the difference between second place and 45th is about 7 percentage points. That's how different he is. When we talk about all-time accuracy over the course of a season, and remember last year, Will broke the Ohio State record for most 80% completion games. I can't remember the number. I think it was maybe 7. And he broke that from CJ Stroud. Maybe it was 8. Well, Sayin is averaging over 80% on the season, which is just bizarre this far into the season. The guy who put the all-time best completion percentage for a season together was Bo Nix. His final season at Oregon, 77.4%. Julian is at 80.7 right now. But to make it even more impressive, Bo Nix average depth of target and more of a, closer to the line offense was 6.5 yards down the field. Obviously, if you're shorter, throwing the ball down the field, it's easier to complete the pass. Julian Sayin is averaging 8.6 yards as an average depth of target, which was 9.7 against Penn State. He is PFF's number 1 rated quarterback, both overall and in passing. Number 1 in adjusted completion percentage. If you factor in drops, he's at 86.1%. And we talked often about the level of accuracy. It's not just accurate like they're catching the ball. It's accurate like it's on their face mask in stride, allowing them to make their move. Or if he doesn't want them going that direction, he's turning them around. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It makes the person he's playing against, the quarterback on the other side, look really bad, even if they're not looking bad. Just watching the two guys play back and forth. It's not been without criticism, though. And much of this stems from his downfield passing. We talked about this a few weeks ago about how he was catching some heat from some prominent college football metrics guys, college football nerds, one of them. And those are analytics guys, and they didn't really take shots at Julian, but we're saying that, the data is not complete. We can't really make a judgment. And then they proceeded to go through each one of his targets downfield and kind of criticize each one. And basically we're trying to say, without saying, that he has a weak arm because he puts a ton of air under the ball, which, as we know, is how Ryan Day coaches his quarterbacks to throw the deep ball. And you're not going out there freelancing. You're going out there doing what Ryan Day tells you to do, or you're not going to be out there. So that's the way he throws his deep ball. And Julian Sayin, now that we are 2/3 of the way through the regular season, where does he rank in long balls, which we categorize as 20 yards or more down the field? He's number one in the country. 20 out of 27 attempts he's completed. That is a completion percentage of 74.1, more than 20 yards down the field. Now that sounds good, right? That sounds good, but what do we know? What's the number 2 guy? Where's he at? I don't know what 74 means. Number 2, also an Ohioan, Eli Holstein, quarterback of Pitt, 56%. 74 is Julian. Second place is 56%. There's only 12 quarterbacks that are above 50%, and they're just barely. And Julian is cruising around at 74.1. Now, this is outrageous. And when you see a statistic like that, the first thing I try to do is look for ways to poke holes in that. Okay, what's the reason? Surely this guy can't be just that much better than everybody else. There's 200 quarterbacks on this list here. Something must be askew. So the first thing you look at, maybe his balls are right at 20 yards and the other guys are averaging like 30 or something. So what's his average depth of target in passes further than 20 yards downfield? Well, his average depth of target is 33.2 yards down the field, which is top 10 as far as depth per target in the country out of those 200 quarterbacks. So it's not that. Certainly not that. Maybe he's not throwing as many as everybody else, and you would see if he had a fuller body of work, he would come down to earth on that 74%. Well, he's completed 20 of them, and the guy with the most completions, number 1, is 24. He's top 10 in yards, so it's not that either. There's no poking holes through this. That is not a statistical anomaly. He is just really that much better. And this is an Ohio State hater's worst nightmare here, because they got to admit one of two things that they don't want to admit. Either the Ohio State receivers are that much better than everybody else, or Ohio State's quarterback is that much better than everybody else. They got to pick their poison. I don't know what they've decided on yet. This information just now getting out there as people paying more attention to Julian. But that's insane. That really is insane. And Julian won the Big Ten Freshman of the Week for the fourth time this past weekend against Penn State. That just came out today. He's also won the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year once. Currently, Ohio State, when we look at Arvell Reese won the Defensive Player of the Week as well. But Ohio State, if we look at all-time Heisman Trophy winners, the Buckeyes in a three-way tie for second place with Notre Dame and Oklahoma with 7 Heisman trophies. USC sits atop at number 1 with 8. Now, I don't like USC to be above Ohio State in anything. That's my second, number 2 most hated program in the history of the world. And I would sure love for the Buckeyes to tie that up with 8. And I view this and always have as a team award. And I've seen more national championships in my lifetime than I have Heisman trophies. So I would be really excited for this. I've only seen 2. And I think that the hype machine turning on Julian now at the perfect time. Who are the contenders? Julian Sayin, number 1 at plus 175. Indiana's Fernando Mendoza, just behind him at plus 220. They were just tied coming into the weekend. So Julian has pushed ahead a little bit. Ty Simpson at Alabama, plus 350. Marcel Reed, plus 650. And then it drops off the face of the earth. So that's it. The top 4 teams in college football, their quarterbacks. We got Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Alabama. Gunnar Stockton is number 5th, but he's at like plus 2,500. He's out of it. We also saw, of course, Dante Moore getting some action early on. He's out of it too. Rounding out that top 10, we got Ole Miss, BYU at number 8, Texas Tech number 9, and Notre Dame at number 10. By the way, guys, Notre Dame is at number 10. And I was scanning through. So Notre Dame, their best win is USC. They got 2 losses. Louisville, they've beaten both Miami, who Notre Dame lost to, and Pitt. Those are their 2 best wins. And their loss was a ranked Virginia team. But of course, Notre Dame is top 10 and Louisville 14. That just doesn't make much sense to me. Doesn't make much sense at all. But we know Notre Dame's always going to get the benefit of the doubt there. And tomorrow, this is the last time we got to look at the top 25, because tomorrow is the college football playoff first announcement of the rankings. So we'll get to see what they're thinking. And that first one's always really exciting. So we can see the difference that they come up with versus kind of the groupthink that we get from the AP poll. That, it's not just groupthink, but they get a format, right? So they get basically here, okay, here's what we're all thinking, and they kind of dial it in with each other, not intentionally, but they're looking at what everybody else is thinking. And, we just have a tendency to kind of want to go with the flow. Most of us, some people want to go against that, but they kind of just start to seed things, and we see the way they're doing it. And then sometimes when the college football rankings come out, we see a couple of real big outliers that we weren't expecting. And we just might see that tomorrow night. I'll be live over at Juck on Bucks for that tomorrow. So join me tomorrow. That'll be at 8, and we'll go live and check out that first one. I don't think we'll do it every week because it gets pretty predictable. But that first one I'm excited to see. But as far as this Heisman Trophy, Marcel Reed, I don't think we can doubt this guy. If you haven't watched him play, I really hadn't watched him a lot since last year. A ton of improvement. Got a really quick release like Julian. Great athlete, sick athlete. And when we look at Texas A&M sitting undefeated, they've got Texas in the final game of the year. And if he could beat Texas, and assuming Texas could potentially go into that game if they get by Georgia with a playoff on the line, so rivalry game, he could potentially surge himself ahead. Then, of course, we got Ty Simpson at Alabama. Alabama goes against LSU, then Oklahoma, then Auburn. So if you look at the helmets around me, they're playing 2 teams that have lost their coach. Look at these helmets, man. These Florida, LSU, Auburn, and Penn State. Now that Hugh Freeze has been fired, that is an unbelievable amount of powerful programs that are looking for head coaches. Of course, we know there are more. There may be other big ones. We may see Florida State's helmet up here soon. I mean, it's just wild. We've never seen anything like this. and we are reaping some of the benefits, and we'll talk about that in recruiting a little later. But Marcel Reed and Ty Simpson will definitely have their opportunities to push ahead. But this certainly feels like what Tony and I were talking about 2 weeks ago. And that is the possibility that we may get the dream matchup in the Big Ten championship, a game that most people would not have possibly cared a lick about heading into the season. Like, yeah, we'd like to win the Big Ten championship, but what's it really mean? It means a lot this year. Fernando Mendoza and the number 2 Indiana Hoosiers, and should Ohio State get there, they got to beat Michigan. So it would, in that case, be number 1 Ohio State and Julian Sayin. And these two would not only be battling for the Big Ten championship, they'd be battling for the number 1 seed in the college football playoff, which means something this year because you not only get the bye, which you do want the bye, despite all the teams that were on a bye losing last year, they were all also the underdog in each one of those games. So you get the bye. In addition to that, you play the winner of the 8-9 seed, which is going to be a much easier backup. You just saw the 8 and 9. Who's the 8 and 9 right now? If we were just to look, we're looking at Texas Tech and BYU. So that's a much different ball game than the winner of Georgia, Oregon, who that number 4 seed is going to play. So you want the number 1 seed. And then, of course, the Heisman Trophy most likely on the line for the winner of that game. Fernando Mendoza needs to go up against the Ohio State defense. Julian Sayin goes up against the Indiana defense. I like his chances. Could Fernando win losing that game? I mean, there are some other things like stories that go into this. What are Fernando's numbers? He's PFF's 15th rated passer, but other than that, the numbers are almost stunningly identical to Julian's. 23 and 24 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 4 interceptions. Fernando, 9.4 yards an attempt. Julian, 10 even. Big time throws. Julian has 12. Fernando has 9. Average depth of target, 8.6 for Julian, 9 for Fernando. I mean, they're almost identical. Even drops. Julian's only had to deal with 3 drops on the year, just 5 for Fernando. Compare that to a school like Michigan. Bryce Underwood's had to deal with like 20 drops on the year. And his completion percentage is dog crap. But when you factor in his adjusted completion percentage, it's actually not that bad. And we'll probably talk some more about Michigan on Wednesday because I'm starting to kind of turn to that game a little bit as the next 3 games Ohio State has versus Purdue, UCLA, and Rutgers. Not exactly games that we need to kind of prep and do pregame stuff for. So I've been watching them. I've been looking at them. Always, of course, you got to make sure you watch Tom and Tony for their Michigan Mondays. They force themselves to sit through the entire games every week. So they've watched every snap of that team this year, and they get a lot of knowledge. I don't know how they do that. I really don't, because whenever I watch them, I'll watch them till it's not close anymore. If they start pulling away, then I just get irritated. So I can only watch them in small doses, but a ton similar about Fernando and Julian. The intangibles, well, Fernando's got Julian beat on this one. And, these things matter. The stories matter. From a national perspective, Julian Sayin's pretty status quo, number 1, Elite 11, goes to Nick Saban's Alabama, transfers to Ryan Day's Ohio State. Fernando Mendoza had 1 offer coming out of high school, went to Cal, had an opportunity for big money to transfer to Georgia, but chose Little Indiana instead. Little upstart Indiana, the worst program in the history of college football, to be something and help get them over the line and take them further than the first round of the playoffs. And that's a big story, man. He's also got a huge personality and he loves to talk with a big smile. There's a lot there, but he's got to beat Julian and he's got to beat Ohio State. And this is obviously a hypothetical matchup. A lot of things have to happen from now to then. I do think Indiana will take care of their business next week in Penn State. That'll be their toughest matchup until then. And, of course, the Buckeyes, they got to get through the game, which will be a huge test. But it could be amazing. It could be amazing. And college football for me is all about the story, and, man, that's an amazing story. So thinking about it gets me excited. What about the Butkus Award? The Bolitnikoff, the Thorpe, the Bednarik. I mean, this roster is loaded, as we know, and we got some freaks. Arvell Reese, could he win the Defensive Player of the Year? He is the Defensive Player of the Week in the Big Ten. He had 12 tackles in the game to go along with a sack and some TFLs, a bunch of hurries. I mean, the dude's just ridiculous. And it's almost to the point when it comes to Jeremiah and Arvell, like when I'm planning out a show, I almost kind of skip over them and go to like, the next crop, because it's just understood that they did ridiculous things. It just gets kind of boring to talk about. Never boring to watch. Never boring to watch for sure. But it's clear that Arvell Reese, one of the best defensive players of the country. He's one of a kind. And watching the buzz every Monday that he sets the internet on fire as the NFL scouts will analyze his all 22 immediately after the game and start putting out cut-ups. And there's like 5 of them now that just do like a weekly Arvell Reese cut-up, and they're just in awe of the guy. They're in awe of what he can do, not just, the way he moves and the speed and the bend, but the strength, the way he can stand up offensive tackles with one arm. It's just different. And there's a real decent chance that he could be a top 10 pick, which is pretty crazy. Coming into the year, I don't think anybody, even people who were super, super high on him, like I was, pounding the table for him to play more last year, I never thought he'd be this good. I thought he'd be a superstar, but not this good. What about the Buckeyes Award? Andy Katzenmoyer won it in 97. AJ Hawk was robbed in 2005. They gave it to Paul Puzlesny. That was a bad night, man. That was a rough night. Can Arvell be the 3rd Buckeyes Award winner in the history of the program? I think his top competition, Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech, also another guy with a nice story. It would be absolutely ridiculous if anybody else won that but him. What about the Thorpe Award, the top DB in college football? Ohio State has won this in 1998 with a guy I watched play a lot in high school, Antoine Winfield from Garfield High School, which no longer exists here in Akron. Antoine, one of my top 5 all-time Buckeyes. 10 years later, in 2008, Malcolm Jenkins won the award, and Ohio State's been shut out ever since. So looking for the 3rd Thorpe Award with Caleb Downs, hopefully. And Caleb, statistically, I don't know that this year stacks up to last year, but I think that it's just understood by everybody who around college football. They understand how much he affects everything that Ohio State does defensively. And the respect that he gets, it's pretty clear he should be the guy that wins that award, at least if nothing else to make up for last year being shunned from it when he had maybe a better statistical year. But he did get a pick this last game, so that was great. The Biletnikoff, Terry Glenn in 95, Marvin Harrison Jr. in 2023. So we're looking for 3s here. We're looking for the 3rd of each one of those awards. When we talk about Jeremiah Smith, man, like the widely regarded best player in the country, right? Nobody really argues with that. If he's the best player in the country and the best player in the country doesn't win the Heisman, the most outstanding player, then surely he's going to win for the best at his position, right? Because if he doesn't, we got a real problem with the way we're doing things here. Are you going to penalize him because he's got another equally great not equally, almost equally, better than everybody else wide receiver across from him? If we actually see that, it would be pretty ridiculous. But, Ohio State gets shunned out of these things quite a bit. Of course, you got the Bednarik Award as well for the best overall defensive player. And we could see, the finalists there include Caleb and Arvell, which would be pretty wild. I would imagine Reuben Bain would be up there, but I think Reuben Bain's candidacy for this maybe taking another hit, as he's been absent in both of their 2 losses, and they just lost, I'm sure you saw it, SMU, which was hysterical. Carson Beck throwing a terrible interception, and then once again getting on that podium after the game and taking no responsibility at all. Guy's got to be a horrible teammate, man. Horrible. I've always disliked him, and I'm kind of happy for his failure. But the Buckeyes were also hoping to, Buckeye fans anyway, hoping that we would potentially have a Mackey Award finalist this year when Max Clare was going to transfer in. A lot of talk about that. So Max not had the season that's going to get him anywhere near the Mackey Award. He was kind of absent over the weekend, but hoping to maybe see him get a little more picked up. We did see some more Brandon Ennis this week, which was great. Brandon had 4 for 41. 5 total targets. Matter of fact, the one inaccurate ball, the one true incompletion that Julian Sayin threw was almost kind of a throwaway, but close enough to BI that you could call it inaccurate. The other 2 were straight throwaways. Other than that, he was 20 for 23. And the amount of incompletions this guy throws, you can remember them all every game, which is just really weird. But I remember Keenan talking about Max Clare before the year, and he was getting so many questions about Max Clare because of the hype about him. And it seemed to me at the time that Keenan was kind of irritated and beating back these questions because I felt like he was taking it as disrespectful to the rest of the room or to his other guys, that everybody was just consistently asking about Max Clare. Maybe there was a little more to it. Like maybe he knew he wasn't quite ready to garner this type of hype and was trying to tamp it down so as not to put those kind of expectations on it. And we've heard Jeremiah, say that he wasn't ready physically, and now he's a dog, so that's good, but he wasn't there at the beginning. So that our awards recap for the year before we get into the rest of the news for the night. If we could all like the show, that'd be fantastic. Subscribe to the channel, please. Here at Buckeye Huddle, we do our best to provide you wall-to-wall coverage of your beloved Buckeyes and our beloved Buckeyes. And a reminder that tomorrow, if you're just tuning in, 8 p.m., we will be live over at Juck on Bucks for the college football playoff show for the unveiling of the first initial rankings. And then we'll be back here Wednesday at 8 p.m. over here on Buckeye Huddle Primetime. So if you could subscribe, that would be awesome. Thank you so much. In the chat, if you've got something that you want me to hit at the end, make sure you put a question mark like our guy Buckeye89 did. What's up, brother? Appreciate you for joining. Freaking Nature, how you doing, guys? Good to see you. Good to see you. What's up, Rome? So Rome actually is Rome was in town at the shoe this week. Now, Rome has a nephew. His name is Jackson Dollar. He is a top 5 tight end in the class of 2027. This was his first visit to the shoe to see Keenan Bailey. Things went really well on that visit. He's a Buckeye offer, of course. He's a big time target, and we'll get some more information on that visit to share with you. But we do got to talk a little bit about recruiting in that mammoth recruiting weekend that Ohio State had versus Penn State, and we've got some movement to discuss. All of it falling on our man Tebow. Tyler Bowen is a guy that I just love what he's done so far at Ohio State, particularly in recruiting. I mean, obviously the jury's out on the offensive line, but for year number 1, with the system that they've implemented, which is very different, that includes Charlie Dickey and Marcus Johnson, previously both had their own offensive line room, and to get these 3 experienced offensive line coaches together to get on the same page, teaching the same thing and working in a way that none of them ever worked before, it takes time. But all in all, I thought they had a pretty good performance against Penn State, which was, their roughest competition since Texas for sure up front. It was certainly better than the Illinois game or the Wisconsin game, no doubt about that, and the Illinois game, really. But I have seen some people when it comes to recruiting taking some shots at Tyler Bowen, most of them kind of tongue in cheek, kind of taking shots at Bowen as a way to say, like, see, Fry wasn't so bad, to the people who are very critical of Fry. I think that's mostly what it is, but I've seen some knocks about him not being able to land a Felix Ojo or Jackson Cantwell type 5-star from out of state. I mean, for one, he had an abbreviated class. Like 2027 is his first full class. For 2, he got in and he had 2 immediate assignments, one of which was Sam Greer, who is now a clear 5-star, top 15 player in the country and has every ability to be the best tackle in college football, just as much as Felix Ojo or Jackson Cantwell. There's no doubt about that. But, of course, they don't want to give him credit for landing Sam Greer or top 100 overall Max Riley because they're in-state. And if this were 5 years ago, I'd agree with them. My stance back then was you better land the in-state prospects that you want. If you don't, it's hell to pay the piper. But now that we've seen in the last 2 cycles, man, things are different. The money's made it different. We've seen a lot of Ohio prospects that Ohio State wanted leave the state. So not exactly easy to land Sam Greer and Max Riley. So he absolutely gets big wins for those. And Ohio State, you can't be so critical of them losing out on in-state guys. If you do, then you better pat them on the back when they keep them, right? Like you can't have it both ways. So securing big-time Ohio guys is always going to be important on the offensive line. And in his first full class of 2027, he's offered 4 Ohio offensive linemen already. He has constant contact with his prospects. he has a ton of energy, and I could feel that energy change probably about a month into him coming to Ohio State, just in the way offensive line recruits were talking about Ohio State. It was totally different. The number of offers, which was always an issue with Justin Fry, in 2024 and 2025 combined, Fry offered 49 prospects. Tyler Bowen, in the class of 27, his first full class, has already offered 43. And that makes me look back and laugh. I went through a difficult time with that whole Fry situation, caught some big criticism for the first time since I had started my show. And it turns out I was right. I was right about that whole situation. But anyhow, Tyler Bowen has offered just 39% of his offers in the Deep South and in Texas, focused, a bigger percentage of the offers, which equals like twice the number of prospects in the Northeast and in the Midwest, which I love, because I think that there was a lot of neglecting going on as Fry was offering more than 50% down South, down Southwest. And sure, you want to recruit those areas, but not at the expense of the Midwest and the Northeast when we're talking like for like prospects. You look at our peers up here at Penn State, Notre Dame, Michigan, they're always great on the offensive line, and they almost all three exclusively recruit the Midwest and the Northeast. There's plenty to go around. We make offensive linemen up here. There's other positions we don't make. Go get them for those. But Tebow in recruiting, he's been awesome and still working on the class of 2026. So entering into the weekend, he had Sam Greer, 5-star, Max Riley, high 4-star, top 100 kid. And then he had Tucker Smith, 3-star, offensive guard, developmental type guy, top 500-ish out of Arizona. Aaron Thomas, 3-star, true tackle body, and the recently flipped Landry Breed from Mentor. Well, he didn't flip from Mentor. He flipped from NC State. He's from Mentor. But Aaron Thomas from Arizona, he has now officially decommitted from the class. And over on my show, 3 weeks ago, probably, I considered him off my board already. Like, I wasn't even including him in my counts and in my stuff because it was pretty clear that this is the way that this was going. As soon as the second round of Florida State stuff came. So the original story back, it was probably, 3 months ago, that he was going to go on a visit to Florida State in Miami for the Florida State Miami game. And he was going to be in attendance. And he was very irritated by that story. And back then I was in correspondence with him and he said, no, I was just going because my mom and dad went there. We go there every year for a game. I was like, okay, that makes sense. But the story resurfaced before that game and it sounded like things were going bad. And then I never heard from him again after that. So it seemed to me like he was definitely gone, and now he officially is gone. But the truth is, I don't think Ohio State cares a bit about this, because when we look at Landry Breed's senior film, he's looking like every bit the prospect Aaron Thomas was. Because you could say whatever, I'm just saying that now because this is the way it played out. But the truth is, Aaron Thomas moved over from the defensive line to the offensive line his junior year. So his offer was based on a big projection, 1 year as an offensive lineman, and his size and his athleticism. And the truth is, his senior film, there was no progress at all from his junior year. Well, there was a lot from Landry Breed's, and that's why he got his offer. And regardless of what Aaron Thomas did, Landry Breed was going to get his offer. I don't think this was like we're pursuing him because we know Thomas is gone. But, it's a developmental deal either way. And I think when you're a developmental prospect and you are being recruited to Ohio State and you commit to Ohio State and then you start flirting elsewhere, they don't take that kindly, man. Like, you better be a top 100 type of kid, or they're not going to go, they're not going to play the game. You know what I'm saying? Basically how it is. You got to understand your status. And that's just the facts of it. If you're a developmental guy and Ohio State gets a commitment from you, you can't be jerking them around like that. And we've seen this happen over and over again. And Ryan Day does not usually double back and start recruiting somebody, even if they come out. Like even Braylon Womack, for instance. Braylon Womack, now that Hugh Freeze is, out at Auburn, there's been, some speculation that maybe Ohio State will get back in on that. I'd be surprised if they did. I would be. But we'll see. Anyway, when we talk about Landry Breed, I think he's a great prospect. And those four, a fantastic 4-pack. But Ohio State, through these 4 fired coaches, have got themselves some more opportunity now. And there was a thought that this class might have a ton of opportunity, and it was going to be a really crazy end of the cycle here in November and December, as we saw a lot of ridiculous offers going out early. And the thought was there were going to be a lot of guys that were decommitting from schools later on when it turned out to be funny money. We're not seeing any of that, not seeing any of that yet, but we are seeing guys having to deal with fired coaches. And that's a very, uncomfortable spot to be in, I'd imagine. You don't know what well, let's say, for instance, this regime said you were going to come here and they were going to work with you like this, and you were going to get this much money, et cetera. Like, all that's up in the air now when you're going to make a coaching change. So not a position anybody wants to be in. And the Buckeyes trying to take as much advantage of that as they can in a class that doesn't really need too much, but it does need some, and it could use some. And one of the things that have popped up here recently is Kevin Brown. Kevin Brown out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, a top 100 offensive lineman who looks like the Abercrombie model mixed with the Incredible Hulk. Here's a picture of Kevin Brown. If you haven't seen this dude, he's just built a little different, and a guy who did not want to leave Penn State, did not want to decommit from Penn State, still is not decommitted from Penn State. Penn State's offensive line coach, Phil Trautwein, was the one who kind of nudged him to go start looking elsewhere, because Phil knows the writing's on the wall. Most of the staff isn't going to be retained. Penn State most likely going to hire a veteran head coach who will bring his staff with him. And Phil wants to give him the right leadership and keep a relationship with him for, either just to be a good guy, or wherever he goes down the line, maybe it becomes a transfer portal edition at some point. Who knows? But Phil told him to go look around. And even though he didn't want to, he decided, all right, I'm going to go look around. Well, this isn't a kid who enjoys the recruiting scene. And the easiest thing for him to do would be to go to his dad's alma mater, West Virginia. They certainly want him. He went and visited middle of the week, and West Virginia, he really likes what they got going on. He has some trust for Rich Rod. He likes what Rich Rod's doing, what he's building. He said West Virginia's like 2-7, but they've got 50 new portal guys. So we'll see how that's working for Rich, I guess, at the end of the year. Anyway, they offered some fair compensation. The family was happy with it. And after that midweek visit, it sounded like maybe the Ohio State visit, which was planned for the Penn State game, was not going to happen. But they kind of talked him into it. And Kevin Brown did visit for the Penn State game. And boy, is he happy. The quotes coming out of this visit, like, this guy's ecstatic. They got everything he's looking for. He said, it was perfect for me. So now I think Ohio State sits in the lead here over West Virginia. And I don't anticipate Penn State making a hire anytime soon. The longer they wait, the better the situation we're in. And could Tyler Bowen potentially get this gift-wrapped top 100 player who they're recruiting as a tackle as well, which would be 2 tackles in the class, really highly rated tackles. At one point, he was a 5-star. And in addition to those 2 super highly rated tackles, top 100 overall Max Riley, that would be an incredibly elite offensive line class. It could happen. It could happen. Add into that Landry Breed and Tucker Smith, a couple of developmental guys who they really like. Tucker Smith is a 3-star developmental guard from Arizona. And that might, I was just talking to my son about this. He's like, why would they go to Arizona to get a 3-star guard? Look, he really likes him. If Tyler Bowen really sees that in him, like, I like it when I can tell, and you can tell, and we can tell by their actions, that a coach really, really likes a guy. And he feels that way about Tucker. So that makes me excited about that. But you got a class there in 26 that he's wrapping up. Should you be able to get Kevin Brown on board? 3/5 Ohio, a kid from Pennsylvania, a kid from Arizona. I love it. I love it. Tucker Smith, I've been calling him an honorary Ohioan anyway, because he plays like a 3-star Ohio meathead. And we'll talk about one of those in a second here when I get a drink of my DP. The most interesting thing about Bowen, I was interested to see how he would handle the 2027 class, his first full class. And it's pretty clear that we're seeing, for one, he's not slow playing Ohio kids. He's offered 4 already. He's also clever, and he scheduled all 4 to Ohio State together for the Penn State game. And Max Riley and Sam Greer, both of those two, he got to commit before their timeline. They were both planning on committing like a month after when they did eventually commit. So both of them committed earlier before they were going to. And just like we saw those two do that, we saw 2 commitments out of the blue over the weekend, as Mason Wilt and Kellen Weimer have both committed very early in their process. And let's talk about these two, as that is now 2/5 of the class of 2027 offensive linemen. So Mason Wilt out of St. Clairsville, 2027, 6'4.5", 300-pound guard who I wrote about on Buckeye Huddle today. He is committed to the Buckeyes, grew up a Buckeye fan, 3-star, number 510 overall in the country. A wrestler, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And in 8th grade, he took third in state. So third in state as an 8th grader, stopped after 9th grade. And we love offensive linemen with a wrestling background, of course, but on the football field, you can really tell he was a good wrestler. He's really compact and very much a lot of girth. I mean, for a kid in high school, he's clearly advanced in the weight room. He's got a really good understanding on how to use leverage. And that is what really pops from that wrestling background. Obviously, so many of these guys in high school can beat the guy across from them just by overpowering them. And then they come into college and they have no natural understanding of the best way to move another guy somewhere he doesn't want to go against his will. And this kid's got it already. He understands how to get his pads low, and that's tough when you're 6'4.5" in high school. He's often pad level lower than his opponent, and that's a great start. So a great start, pretty quick feet, pretty athletic, not very long arms and such, but for what he is, I think he's a heck of a player. And that's going to be, he kind of reminds me of Jake Cook, to be honest. Jake, maybe about half an inch taller, but other than that, it's a lot similar to Jake Cook, who's doing great at Ohio State. One of the reasons that he decided to commit to Ohio State, I absolutely love, and that's Avery Henry. Avery Henry, also from St. Clairsville, which I had totally forgotten about, but he told me the way Ohio State treated Avery Henry when he got sick, if you guys remember, he's the Buckeye who got bone cancer, was diagnosed in 2002, had to medically retire. And the way Ohio State's coaches and all the players treated him, and as I remember, I wasn't covering the team then, but just as a fan, I felt proud how far above and beyond they went for Avery Henry. And that was a big part in Mason's decision. And I thought that is a pretty cool story and shows a pretty mature 17-year-old, which I really liked. Of course, didn't help or hurt that he was a Buckeye fan. So he called Tyler Bowen on Thursday, told him he wanted to commit. Tyler told him to wait till Saturday and tell Coach Day in person, which he was very nervous about. But he did do that, gave Coach Day that surprise news before Coach Day went and whooped up on Penn State. Now let's get to Kellen Weimer. And Kellen Weimer we're talking top notch here. 4-star blue chipper, number 68 overall in the country, and Notre Dame, Michigan after him pretty hard. 6'5", where you can go either way, right? You can be an Austin Cerebell at tackle, or you can be a Tegra Shabola at guard. I think he'll be a tackle. He's pretty long. Mom is an Ohio State fan. Dad is a Notre Dame fan. He somehow grew up a Michigan fan up in Northwest Ohio, which I guess that's why. Probably had a couple of his class buddies. But anyhow, Michigan just offered, I think, 2 days ago. So he committed pretty quick. Ohio State offered him in June. Michigan just offered him. He didn't even wait to go check it out. And he told me he just knew what he wanted and he felt right. So there you go. When it comes to this kid on film, I mean, he is an athlete. It is very clear that he could probably play tight end if he wanted to. I mean, that's the kind of athlete he is. It just jumps off. He can get to the second level really fast. He moves smooth, very long legs. And I think that this guy's going to be one heck of an offensive lineman. About 285 right now, maybe 280, 285. So they'll put some proper mass on him, and he's going to be a dude, absolute dude. So what I love here is when we look at these guys who are, Ohio kids, they're no muss, no fuss. When they make their commitment, we don't ever really hear anything else about it. So they're pretty much locked in. And as we look at that class in 2027, you got Jameer Brown, you got Brady Edmonds. Now you got these two linemen, you got Jeremiah Smith's little brother, and that's a pretty good looking class. It's number 5 so far in the country, which means absolutely nothing at this point. But there's been some consternation about Jameer Brown taking visits elsewhere. He's visited Notre Dame. The other visits were just like with his travel 7-on-7 team and stuff. Jameer has a plan number 2, and that's Notre Dame, no doubt about it. Plan number 1 is Ohio State, and the Showtime Ohio State Block O on his arm tells us that. I went and saw him down at Pickerington Central this year, and I don't know that I've ever seen someone with so much speed and shiftiness and physicality. Like he really had it all. The touchdown that I saw him score that night, the quarterback got thrown out of the game for a play. So the coaches were just yelling at him, Jameer, get in. So he goes in at quarterback, and it's just like, all right, they snap him the ball from the 20. And as a Wildcat quarterback, he just goes off left tackle, jukes a couple guys, and then runs over a safety with authority into the end zone. Pretty much a machine, and he can catch. And obviously the speed, you've seen the speed numbers. He took the 100 meters in track for the state championship. He's ridiculous. And then you got Brady Edmonds, who, look, in my opinion, top 5 quarterback all day in this class. He's basically the prototype. He's 6'5" and legitimately now 230. Think about that. This kid's 6'5", 230. He's going to come into Ohio State 6'5", 235. I mean, he's getting like built up now. And how much does Josh Allen weigh? Isn't he like 240? Like, this dude is enormous. You remember how enamored Ryan Day was about Will Howard and his size, man. But I love watching Brady throw the ball. It is a cannon that dude's got attached to him. If he can get the accuracy down in Ryan Day's system, and we saw how much more accurate Will Howard got in Ryan Day's system, it's clear that with the efficiency, now we've seen 2 straight quarterbacks, this is the focus. This is the focal point. And I suspect we're going to continue to see that. By the way, not to discount Luke Fahey, who is the class of 2026 quarterback, who also is a blue chip prospect, but not a very highly rated guy compared to some of these other guys that we're used to Ohio State getting. Luke just passed for 549 yards and 7 touchdowns against an 8-1 team on not this past Friday, but the previous Friday. He's a dog, man. He's an absolute dog. And we talk about this accuracy, like I think that he's going to be another one of those type of kids. So Luke Fahey, who it looked like might be a potential placeholder between Tavian St. Clair and Brady Edmonds. And, maybe look, if he ends up to be a starter, great, that's fine. But these are the 2 big dogs here. Maybe not so much, man. He might have something to say about that. So pretty awesome stuff there. 2 cornerbacks, class of 26 guys, as the Buckeyes definitely need a cornerback, only have Jordan Thomas in the class right now. 2 are in town. CJ Branaugh, who is a new offer from Walt, a Florida commit, who is now interested in Ohio State, obviously came up for his visit. And Walt just went and saw him like 2 weeks ago, offered him 6'2", a burner, lightning fast, long, playing kind of lower division football. So the competition isn't great, but he looks great. And he's got measurables, legit measurables at 6'2", 185 and verified speed. Really good looking prospect, the number 15 overall corner. And then you got Jay Timmons out of Pittsburgh, who committed to Florida State, where his dad went. Dad played for the Steelers. That's why he's in Pittsburgh. And with what's going on at Florida State right now with Mike Norvell, the AD coming out saying that he's going to review Mike Norvell at the end of the year, it just doesn't sound too promising that that's going to be one that sticks despite the huge buyout. We've seen those buyouts aren't deterring everybody anymore. So Timmons was in town, and that one sounds like it went really well. Another one that went really well that I did not see coming at all. So it was it was early on in the cycle. Carlos Loughlin was down in Texas, and he offered Legend Bay, who's a quarterback. North Forney, I think maybe was the high school down in Texas. And he's a quarterback, but he offered him as a running back. And I pulled this kid up. He's like a 5'9" quarterback. This kid is electric. I mean, ridiculous. And he ends up committing to Tennessee. Well, now as we're kind of seeing the running back room not really shape out the way some thought it might. Next year, when you look at CJ Donaldson leaving, out of eligibility, you're obviously going to be able to keep Bo Jackson and Isaiah West relatively easy. Are you going to be able, or, what's going to happen with James Peoples? Nobody knows. What's going to happen with Turbo Rogers? There's been some rumblings that maybe that's not going great. Don't know. Amari Latimer, who was a potential flip talk, committed to Wisconsin. And now that Wisconsin is looking more stable, as it looks like the AD came out and kind of supported Luke Fickell and talked about, we're going to invest in players. Maybe he ends up sticking with them, but he also visited Miami, where he's from. There was word that they threw a big offer at him, and he visited Tennessee this last week for Tennessee's dark mode. And if you haven't seen pictures from that, man, that was quite an experience. Ross Bjork went to Oregon to check out things he needed to do for the stadium. And we've got some things to talk about that on Wednesday's show, as Ross had an interview, and he had a lot of things to say about the stadium environment. Buckeyes will get another opportunity with a night game, as it's been announced that UCLA going to be an 8:30 game, and that's exciting. Anyway, Legend Bay, they got him up for a visit for this Penn State game. I talked to Legend Bay today, and it's not often you talk to these guys after an official visit, and it's usually pretty much canned, same answers. This dude was lit, man. He was like, Ohio State's insane. It's the best football program in the country. I can't wait to get back to Columbus. Like, this guy seems really enamored here. And the question is, what do you do with him? You got he's my favorite playmaker in the class. Like, he's just a playmaker, but he's 5'9", 10.23, 100 meter. Like, he's legit speedy guy. And it's just like, you got to be creative. You got to be willing to do what we're seeing Matt Patricia do. Let me pull him up here for you. You got to be willing to do what we're seeing Matt Patricia do. You got to be willing to figure out a way to get him the ball. You got to have some creativity on offense. But you can see the dude is just a twitch monster with breakaway speed. He's also got some physicality to him. And I love him. And I mean, like, this cut up will go for 10 minutes if you let it. The dude is ridiculous. But when we look at Turbo Rogers, who is of similar stature, Turbo a little bit bigger and bulkier, we've not seen Turbo, get even a garbage time carry. And even if you're going to redshirt him, like, why isn't Turbo getting a garbage time carry? Does it have something to do with his size? Is it attitude? What's going on? I'm not quite sure. I can't really find out. But Legend Bay, without a doubt, a better athlete than Turbo, and not quite as strong or stocky. But man, he's electric. And I would love it if they wanted him, because if they wanted him, they want to use him. And this dude's just legit. He's so legit. So I don't know how Tennessee was preparing to use him. But if the Buckeyes do end up getting him in the class, which is sounding more and more likely based on his tone today, I would sure like it. And this guy really is a legend. Like, that's not a nickname. It's his real name. And he grew up and became a legend in his little Texas town for football, which is pretty cool. So pretty good stuff, guys. Anyway, that's our update. Let's see what our chat's got to say. How we doing tonight, friends? Ryan, what's up, buddy? Ryan says, oh, wait, you guys can't see me. Sorry, guys. There I am. Jacques, when we find out if Downs is a no-go for Purdue or not? Not sure, brother. Not sure. Maybe we'll get some info for tomorrow. Tomorrow we got to go. Tomorrow's Tuesday. I got to go down to Columbus tomorrow morning. I totally forgot about that. I got to make sure I charge the robot car so the robot car can drive me. Rome, how was the visit? How was the visit with Jackson? What do you have to say? Jam, what's up, buddy? Where's Mika? Mika, what's up? What's up, Posh? Emily? The ladies in town tonight. Trapland Music says, who is Aaron Thomas? Seriously asking. Aaron Thomas was a offensive lineman that was committed to the class, who is no more. I'm with NK. Kevin Brown. Let's get it. Terry, what's up, brother? No, Jay, that's not the original argument. Jay says, to be fair, the way I understood their argument was a bit more nuanced than arm strength. I believe they were suggesting arguing the balls thrown over 20 yards are out past behind coverage. That's their updated argument. Their original argument was trashing his arm strength, saying that he can't get it there on a frozen rope. He has to lob it up way in the air, is what they were saying. But yes, their updated statement is what you're saying here, that he's not completing the medium range ones where you got to rip it in a small window. Richie Dubs is blocked on Mika's channel. Mika, why did you block Richie? That's unbelievable here. I thought we were friends in this chat. Huh. What's up, Vargo? Who blocked Richie? Mika blocked Richie. Look at this. Zach already bought his tickets to the Big Ten championship. How do you guys feel about our special teams? They're special, all right. I heard somebody say today, Fielding made all his extra points, guys. Like Fielding made all his extra points. He did, man. He did make all his extra points. No, Max is not done this year. Look, there's no way he enters the draft, right? Like he needs another year of college. And I think he'll be back. Hey, Steph, how you doing? Buckeye number 1, Buckeye OG. Hey, John. First live show. Appreciate it, buddy. Thanks for popping in. Love the lives. The H, thank you so much for the super chat. If Sayin threw for 70% the rest of the games, he finishes at 77.5. Is that the record? What did I say Bo Nix was? 77.4? So, if we think about it, the Big Ten championship, and then if he's got to go with a bye, 3 to the national championship, you're going to have 4 really tough opponents, plus Michigan. So 5 really tough opponents. But before those 5 really tough opponents, you've got Purdue, UCLA, and Rutgers. So, when we look at the 2 toughest opponents against Texas, and again, okay, what does Texas really count for anyway, right? If we look at how he performed against a legit Penn State defense that didn't have anybody out, he went over his numbers. So I'm not sure if the competition can even set him back, really. Thoughts on what Coach Key is doing for 2026? I don't love it, and a lot of that has to do with I really like Nick Latour from Lebanon, who he went and visited a couple weeks ago, but he hasn't offered him. And I think like he gets really fixated on guys. He is so hyper fixated on Max Sutter, and I just don't think there's any way to pull him. I don't think he's budging. I think the deal from Bama has made it impossible for him to budge, even if he wanted to, because Ohio State is, roughly half. And as much as he likes Ohio State and he likes Keenan, I think he likes Alabama equally as much. And in that case, you let the money be the judge there. And the money was the judge. And I understand his decision. So, Corbin Fordham flips out of the class, and Corbin was a guy who was like, Keenan gets his guys. And like, that was his guy. So now his guy flips out. And it's just like, what do you do? Well, you take one of these Ohio guys, or you just don't take anybody, save the spot. And if that's the way he wants to go, I get it. Like, it's like, none of these. Preston Frizzell is the best of the Ohio prospect in my mind, but he's committed to Notre Dame. So you'd really have to do some serious work. Nick Latour is committed to Louisville. I think he's a really good prospect. He's big, he's long, he can run. So ultimately, I think there's a decent chance we may end up with no tight end in this class. Terry says, Juck, Aiden Reeder, a 26 linebacker from Cincinnati, decommitted from Wisconsin. No, I mean, not so much, but mostly just because I'm pretty fixated on Braxton, who's coming in. I think he said UCLA. Let me double check that. Yeah, Braxton Rembert is coming in for the UCLA game, and he is that 6'5", 200-pound kid that Laurinaitis just offered from North Carolina. And he can move. And the reason, he's a very lowly ranked prospect, like 1,300th ranked prospect in the country. But Laurinaitis sees something in him, and he's playing him for the long game. What's the potential there? It could be huge. It could be huge. So I'm pretty interested in that. In an On3 article, Legend said he was told he could play as a freshman. Play as a freshman at Ohio State? He was told that? Matt says the best comp for Legend is legitimately Tavon Austin. There's no argument there. What's up, Chris? How you doing, buddy? Ooh, wow, that's a tough question. Hey, Juck, you think Arvell Reese or Caleb Downs is a better prospect for the NFL? Absolutely. I think that just based on positional value, Arvell Reese is a better prospect because, I think he's going to impact a game more. But that's even tough to say because Caleb impacts games in ways you don't even think about. It's a really tough one. Anyway, guys, join me tomorrow at 8 p.m. over at Juck on Bucks. And Wednesday night, of course, we'll be back here for Buckeye Huddle Prime Time on Wednesday. So tomorrow, 8, Juck on Bucks. Wednesday back here on Buckeye Huddle Prime Time. I do appreciate you all so much for joining me. And it's been real. Have a great rest of your evening. And I will talk to you tomorrow. Buckeye Huddle Prime Time out.